I started doing more crowd work, and so many comedians have been too stuck up to do crowd work. They've been critical of crowd work. Um, uh, all right, I'm going to give a sidebar about crowd work.
Yeah.
I was talking to, and I'm not going to name the comedian, but I was talking to this comedian that we'll say that they're on a big TV show.
Is this in New York or LA?
This was in New York.
New York.
And
okay.
So I'm talking to this comedian, and this comedian was like trying to give me shit about being like a crowd work clip comedian, you know?
Oh, wow.
And this comic goes, yeah, well, you know, it's like those comedians that do crowd work. Oh, sorry, Pete, you do crowd work. Sorry, I just think it's shitty. And I pulled up my Instagram and I go, do you see this number? I go, 10 million people watch my crowd work clips every single month.
Wow.
And I go, about 1.5 million people watch the shitty TV show that you're sort of on.
Oh, man.
Because this person's not really on that TV show. Like, it's just like a little tiny spot part. And everybody at the table, we were at the cellar table, everybody at the table like went, oh, you know, because it was like I'm almost like embarrassed saying that I was that mean to somebody, but like it was uncharacteristically mean, but it also, it really encompassed exactly how I feel about that. Like, I don't feel like anybody in comedy should ever be like too good to do anything in comedy, you know, like, like you go to open mics and you'll see that asshole open micer that's like, oh my God, like you just did a joke and then you did an act out. And I'm like, well, what if the act out is really funny? What if it helps? What if the crowd, what if it helps somebody in the crowd, like really take that humor and identify with something inside of them and it made them feel good, you know, like are you still too good for an act out? You know?
Yeah, I've heard you say that you want to make sure people feel your jokes.
Yeah.
How do you make sure there's an emotional connection with the audience?
I actually, I do it in the setup of the joke. Like that's, cause like one of the ways to get people to like instantly connect with a bit is to be vulgar. Like that's why a lot of the vulgarity in a joke isn't even in a punchline. It's in the setup of it, because vulgarity makes you it makes your senses snap too. And it makes you, it just like, I don't know, there's something about it that makes you go, and then like when you're emotional about something, you connect with it. Well, I've like really studied that, and I try to never bring up a topic unless I can like make it emotional, you know, because why in the hell am I talking about it if it's not emotional? You know, like even like the silliest thing, like I have the bit about motion sensor sinks, and like it's like really about getting into I hate conflict, and I'm getting into a fight with an inanimate object and I'm losing. And like, so that's what the whole bit is about. It's not even about the punchlines within it. It's about the fact that I'm like, I hate conflict, I hate arguing, and now I'm losing an argument while I'm by myself with this thing, you know?
Interesting.
And I think that's what, like, even though people are identifying with the motion sensor sync and how frustrating those things are, which that's an emotion within itself, they're really identifying with like, God, I hate getting into fights and I hate losing a fight, especially like when I shouldn't even be in one, you know?
Oh, interesting.
And one of my best friends, Joe, we have this motto that we say, no drama during fun time. Like if we're out drinking or if we're out partying or whatever, if somebody in the group has drama, we're like, nope, like don't give me drama during my fun time, you know? And like, when I thought of the motion sensor sinks thing, I actually was like a little hammered because, you know, I get hammered a lot. And I remember thinking like, fucking no drama during my fun time, you know? And so like, that was the core of the emotion of the whole thing, which I really believe in that. Like, cause a long time ago, I was Louis C.K.'s opener. Like, and this was like back when he was still working comedy clubs. Like, and I went to him and I was like, I think I know what you're doing. And he's like, he goes, don't ever start a conversation with that. But I was like, I think I know what you're doing. I'm like, you're doing stand-up jokes and bits, you know, in the traditional, you know, setup, punchline, tag. I go, but you're also like kind of doing one-man sketches. And like, I was like, and I know that, you know, you used to write for like the Dana Carvey show and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I know that you know sketch very well. And he's like, honestly, he goes, a lot of the stuff follows the format of like find a fun game, heighten, and then the last punchline of the bit is actually the first punchline of the next game of the next bit, and just kind of almost kind of like a one man herald, you know, like that you would learn if you went to study at the UCB. And I was like, how do I learn that? And he's like, well, he's like, you live in New York City. He's like, you should actually go and study at the UCB. So on his suggestion, I went and I took all the classes at the UCB, like all of the improv, all the sketch. It's funny, the Daily Show's Jordan Klepper, who's just brilliant and amazing. He was my first improv teacher, and we still stay in touch. And he was such a good teacher at teaching like the fundamental element of like figuring out what a game is. And like the way that you figure out what a game is you just ask yourself the question, what is fun about this? Like, instead of like as stand-ups, we get in our head about like, how can I make this brilliant? Or like, how can I impress my friends who are comics in the back of the room? And that's not the way to get to the funniest thing ever. You know, like, you're actually going to get writer's block if you think that. Like, if you ask the question, like, how can I find the fun? What's fun here? You're going to come up with so much content, because I don't know, like, I'm trying to look around the room or think of something, or I'll give you an example. The Queen died, you know, and I remember I was just like heading to my gig, and I'm like, all right, I got to write something about the Queen dying, because, you know, number one, I really like the Queen. I'm odd, but so I wanted to write a joke that was funny about her dying, but not like super disrespectful or so disrespectful that it was funny, you know? And so I started thinking, I'm like, what's fun about her dying? And then I just remember in my head, I go, the Queen died, and I go, fucking fentanyl, you know? And that was that joke. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. And then I like, oh, you got another one, you know? And I took that on stage that night. And then another thing that Louis told me is like, just like, if you take something funny on stage, your mouth will save you with the rest. Like, your brain will save you. Like, don't overthink it, and like, don't overwrite a bit, because a lot of times you're funny, and trust that you're going to be funny. And like, but I remember there being a point in time where I had written like a good 45 minutes, and then I thought to myself, like, I can never write anymore. Like, so I thought that I had my lightning years, and it dried up. And then I started to create in this more game-minded sense. And all of a sudden it was like, there's just unlimited creativity, because I'm just flowing, and I'm not thinking, and I'm just letting it come out of me. And it was, I don't know, like, I kind of wish that Bob Dylan wasn't so famous, so that he could create as not a famous person and just let it rip. You know?
Is the game, is that what you referenced earlier? In like,
yeah,
is that what you mean by game?
Game, yeah. So game is a UCB term, and game is basically what stand-ups would call a premise, like the nut of it. What's the big idea? Like, what's the fun idea? And so yeah, it's like the thing that makes the whole bit. And in stand-up, you do like setup, punchline, tag. In like an improv and sketch, you just go, what's the funny thing, and then how can I heighten it? Like how can I make it bigger and bigger until it hits that end beat? And so I try to think of things in terms of like this model, but sometimes this joke to me is just the start of the game, you know? And then I'm trying to heighten it and play it. And the emotion is the thing that keeps it's the fire that keeps the pistons moving in the engine of the whole thing.
Okay. So when you have a game, you then ask, like, how do I feel about this?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always asking myself how I feel about it. And the more honest that you can be with yourself, the more creativity that will flow. One of the things, like, if you're being dishonest with yourself, because, okay, so let's say you have one funny punchline, and you're like, God, this is the thing, and I gotta figure out more stuff that goes off of this. Sometimes this punchline isn't truly how you feel, and so that's why you can't write the rest of the punchlines. But sometimes if you let yourself go, well, all right, let me just let this go and let me see what else is true here. And let me see what's more true than that. Sometimes you can get to something even funnier and then write the rest of it. That's kind of like, I mean, you've probably had it where you wrote a bit and like one of the taglines wound up being the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're like, I thought this was going to be the thing, but this was actually the thing.
Right.
And so then you hate to throw this away because you thought this was a diamond in the rough, but eventually you got to be like, well, fuck that. I got to go with this. And then this spawns a whole nother bit.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just have to do that. And you got to ask yourself like, well, how do I really feel about this? You know, a lot of times what's funny is what you don't want to admit, you know, like the thing that you don't want to tell people, because like we go around our whole lives and we're like, just be cool. Like we almost don't want to be seen, right? Like please don't see me, you know, please don't see what's in here. But a lot of times if you let people see what's in there, the thing that you're trying to hide, that's the thing that people find funny because they're like, oh man, me too.